Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And welcome back. We begin our first conversation this morning, which is a two-part discussion with the joint union negotiating team. That being said, we have with us the president of the Belize National Teachers Union, Elena Smith. We also have with us the president of the Public Service Union, Gerald Henry, and the president of the Association of Public Service Senior Managers, Chief Magistrate Sharon Fraser. Good morning, folks. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Isani. Morning, Marlene.
Let's begin by getting from you guys an update from the most recent meeting that was held with the government in respect of the demands that are being put forward by the joint unions.
Well, as you know, we met, and that is because ultimately we had reached an impasse. And we had actually left the ball in the court of the government. And in fact, they did call us back to the table on Thursday. And of course, we went to see what it is they were bringing to us, what new things they were bringing to us. In the meantime, I must say that we had come up with an 11-point document that somehow got in their hands. So they spoke to us about that. But I want to say that even with all of that, the position that the joint union had was that we couldn't move past point 2 on those list of salient points that we had come up with, and the point 2 had to do with the salary cut. I know that, in fact, and maybe the public may very well know that government has in fact put that 10% salary cut in the budget already. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, you have members who are still saying that they are not comfortable. They do not accept the 10% cut. So it was hard for us to move forward away from that point 2. So that is where we actually were stuck, if I could put it like that. Yeah. I don't know if it is that my sister or brother would want to further elaborate, but that is where we were come Thursday. And it's kind of difficult for us to move forward from that, because the general feeling is that the decision was unilateral. Mm-hmm. We had made a number of suggestions that could have been considered before reaching the cut, but this is where we are. They've cut, nevertheless, with effect from the 1st of May. Yeah. So I don't know. Our position is not, while it is that our members have indicated that they cannot, my member have indicated that they cannot afford the cut, they were still prepared to say, okay, fine, we can do this, but you need to do certain things. I'm going to let Sister Elena and Brother Henry speak on that aspect.
Let me just jump in there with that one for a second, because I think that's part of the clarity that's needed at this time. The conversations over the past month, I would say, it started with no salary cuts. And then as the time drew closer with the budget and the budget debate, we started to hear, well, you know, the salary cut is already in the budget, but, or for example, with APSSM, you said you were open to the salary cut, but with certain conditions. Are we now, has the situation changed where members are now saying no to the salary cut across the board?
No, that is not what we are in fact saying, because the issue was not only about the salary cut,
Yes.
the issue was also about the good governance
Yeah.
Yes.
procedures. It was also about putting in place cost savings and revenue enhancement measures.
Yes.
So while it is, yes, you might very well be hearing about the salary cut, it was not only just that. That has taken some prominence because it means that you are taking away property from persons. And I know at some point in time the issue was raised, if you're taking my property, what are you going to give me for it? What am I going to get in place of that? How am I going to fill that shortcoming, that gap? Many proposals were made in relation to how it is that we could fill that gap that will exist as a result of the 10%. I've heard many stories, and I'm sure that my sister and brother president can tell their experience of stories that their members are saying they don't know what they're going to do in relation to the fact that they would have lost 10%. I know that one of my members were indicating that we are now seeing far more incidents of depression, far more incidents of anxiety attacks because they don't know what they're going to do. So we cannot ignore that aspect of it. While it is, I can, yes, confirm that all of us have been asking for good governance. So if we're going to lose things, put good governance in place so that we're not back here 3 or 5 years from now.
Yeah.
So, but there are things, and I will not sit here and tell you that the government has not moved as far as that is concerned. They have. We have gotten drafts of what would amount to Whistleblowers Act. We have gotten a draft as it relates to
Recovery.
illicit assets and recovery, asset recovery. We've also to consider campaign financing legislation. We had given them a draft for them to look at and pass back to us. So we've moved somewhere, right?
Yeah.
As far as the good governance is concerned, the legislations are concerned.
Yes.
No, putting that forward is one thing, implementation is another thing.
Yes.
But at least we have moved on that end. There are some other issues that the government have put to us, but unfortunately we have not gone into any extensive discussion on them because, as I said, we're kind of stuck at point 2. You have members who are saying, I don't know how I'm going to manage with the fact that they've taken 10% from me.
Yeah.
That is their lunch money, that is their commuting money, that is their babysitting money.
Yeah.
There are so many things.
Senator Smith, let me shift this over because that's a key point that you're making there, President Frazier. President Elena, that's one of the aspects of this process that people that can really draw it out. You have the proposals on the table, but you go back to your membership, and it seems that the message coming back repeatedly from your individual branch units is that they don't want the salary cut. So how do you go back to a table with the government when they're firm on that position, but your membership, who guides your position, are also firm on their position?
Are you there, Senator Smith?
Oh, it seems that it froze for a second.
It's a difficult place to be at because you enter these meetings and you're hoping that you have some leverage that you can work with, and to you have to go into a meeting with a firm position, it tends to minimize the possibilities that you have of maybe coming to some sort of an agreement. But at the end of the day, our role is to represent what our members want. And so we have to go to that table and we have to present their position. And then if we are given other positions, we must come back to them and then share that position with them. The difficult part, Marlene, is sometimes when you bring back to the membership the government's position, when they're saying, okay, we are offering you this, and you take that back to your membership to get a feel from them as to whether they would accept or not. Sometimes members take it to mean that you are forcing them to accept a position, when in fact you are only sharing with them, what has been shared with you or what has been offered to you. So those areas are the most difficult ones. Of the day, we have to ensure, as Tashawn said, that when we go through these discussions, that as best as we can, our members don't come out losing too much. And that is a balance that we must create with our members and with the negotiating team.
Yeah.
All right, Senator, in terms of what your membership is saying, you've presented to them what government has shared with you as a collective body. What has been their response, either to the 10% situation or to the good governance counterpoints that are being made?
Well, in terms of the 10%, our members, for the most part, have remained firm that they cannot afford a cut, and they do not want a cut. So every time we go back to them, we get back that same position. In terms of the good governance issues, that is an area that they have always been concerned with, and their fear is that we must not go into these negotiations and just accept that the government says they will do certain things. And so for them, they are not satisfied until we have something in black and white that we can hold them to. So going back and say, okay, we have gotten the first job, we have gotten, that's okay.
Yeah, we're having a bit of a break in transmission there. Let's get.
They applied those steps things in black and white.
Yeah.
And that is what we have to, we have said to them that at the end of the discussions, that is the expectation, that we will have these in black and white to be able to share with them. And hopefully when that time comes, they will be okay with that.
Let me ask you a question here, Senator. For you guys, is it perhaps a feeling of once bitten, twice shy, considering the fact that in 2016, as a union, you went on a strike for 11 days, you wanted the UNCAC to be brought forward, implemented, and what have you. But legislating is one thing, enacting and enforcing is another. And we're looking at a situation now where there's draft legislation being presented to you guys, and perhaps at some point this will come into law. But enforcing it may be a totally different ballgame down the road from now, 2-3 years, perhaps 4 or 5 years from now. Do you feel as if though you're back at the same place you were in 2016?
For some, that has been the fear, the concern, and maybe even the lack of trust in the process because, of that previous process. And when you get to that point, it's a bit more difficult to be able to convince, if you will, that listen, we have reached a further point now, and so let's work this process and see, how best this goes. But at the end of the day, as we keep saying to them, we have to ensure that we continue to monitor the progress of these legislations. It's not just about fighting to get them legislated, but it's what happens after that. And we play a critical role in monitoring and ensuring that we hold government accountable to implement these legislations. So that is where we are, and we understand now that we have to be a bit more vigilant going forward. Once these have passed, we have to be more vigilant to ensure that, yes, they have been passed, but they must be implemented properly. And so that is the area now that we as unions, the entire group of unions must focus on what happens after this has been passed. How do we monitor? How do we evaluate? How do we ensure that we do what should be done via this legislation?
I want to move on to the president at PSU, Gerald Henry, in just a bit, but I do want to make a note here, President Smith, that today makes 11 days since you initiated your strike action, which means following today, this will be the longest strike from the teachers union on record. What does that communicate for you?
I'm not sure that we were really and truly paying attention to the days. It's like, it doesn't feel like 11 days. It's been going so quickly by that you lost track of time because you're so focused on the discussions and the negotiations or consultations. But I think it simply means, Marlene, that our people are no more forceful in terms of what it is that they want, and they have said to us they will not back down until they get certain things. So they realize that if we keep pressure, we are able to make certain movements, and that is what they want. So hopefully, if it is that we can get some movements this week and we can get to some agreements, then that should be the end of it. Yeah. If we don't get those agreements that our members are satisfied with, then we'll have to see what would be their other mandate going forward.
Well, there are always concerns of losing steam when you have a protracted industrial situation such as this. Do you get from your membership that they are still very much along with the program here, that they're prepared to go the long haul?
Yes, for the most part. There have been a few who have been quite intimidated by management, by persons in higher authority, and some of them have stepped back a bit.
Yeah.
And this has always been the case that whenever we are on strike, sometimes
All right, so we have a break in transmission there. So let's go over to.
But for the most part.
Yeah. So President Henry, let's.
For the most part, they're still.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll shift over to President Henry while we try to work out that connection issue. President Henry, I asked President Smith about the length of the strike. The last time the public service unions came out of their offices and participated in a strike, it was back in 2005. So let's talk about what the actions of this past week means for your union.
Good morning again, Marlene.
Morning.
I believe that what it is indicating, hopefully, is that as I like to call it, the sleeping giant is on its way to getting out of the coma that it has been since then. And public officers are starting to understand that, the degree of power that we have as a collective body, and if we work together, what it is that we can accomplish. So hopefully, moving forward or going forward, the public officers will start to, more public officers will join the union, because now they are seeing exactly what it is that, especially the younger ones, what it is that the unions are there for. We fight on their behalf. We are out there for them, even when some of them aren't out there for themselves. And I'm hoping that, like I said, we will see a significant increase in membership and also a significant increase in the participation of those who are our current members.
Yeah. So let me ask in general, whoever wants to jump in. It seems very unlikely that the government is going to back down from the wage cut. Do you believe that there is a solution forward with the membership that includes the wage cut? In other words, as leaders, do you believe there'll be a point where you can convince or get the members on board or in agreement to the fact that there will be a wage cut?
Well, the truth is, Marlene, as I indicated in the beginning, is that the wage cut is already in effect
Yes.
as of the 1st of May,
Yes.
right? Which officers members will see come the 15th of May and the ending of May. But I think, based on my experience and interaction, it would have been clearly a different sell had we started out with, okay, we're forced to do this, but this is what we will offer in compensation. We will go. I know that Brother Henry has spoken on the fact of maybe it is government could have approached the utility companies, for example, and maybe make them offer discounts. So maybe the same 10% we were losing, there could have been 10% discount. They could have approached certain merchants. This is where the Chamber of Commerce could have come in. They talk about us getting back to the table. But the question I asked is, so what are they doing to help with this process? They could have approached certain merchants as far as allowing public officers and teachers to get percent in discounts, 10, 15%, to make up for that shortfall. At the end of the day, you want to know, if I lose this amount of money, I will still be able to manage. While this is really not my original idea, I know that Brother Henry has been preaching this area that could have been looked at, so that it would have been that you lose, but I know if I go somewhere, I will be paying less. He actually had spoken about maybe going to the bus owners to offer discount on fares, so that would have cut down on the commuting costs for public officers and teachers, and therefore they wouldn't feel like their backs against the wall and they don't know how they're going to get to work or how they're going to eat.
But that's going to be tough considering the fact that gas prices continue to fluctuate.
Well, even with that, government could have decided, oh, well, maybe I need to just drop just maybe a percentage in terms of tax. You have to figure out a way. There are many ways. We actually feel that, in fact, despite the fact that Belize is facing a financial crisis, that for the most part, we are taking the blunt of trying to correct that financial crisis. What about the rest of the country? And not just that. Remember that we have families. We have persons who, I go to the famous excuses that is being used, that, oh, well, there are so many persons who, in fact, are without jobs, but some of those people include our family members. So they make it seem as if it is just people out there, and public officers and teachers are not affected by the loss of jobs. And that's fine. If you're not working, you don't get paid. But they fail to understand that public officers are still working, teachers are still working. And during the pandemic, we worked. I told people that the courts never shut down during the pandemic. In fact, we got more work.
Yeah.
So the situation is that we are fighting, yes, for all the good governance measures. And as Sister Elena have said, government have shown at least the initial willingness, in that we've received draft documents, and we're grateful. We're doing our part. We're doing our reviews. We have set some timelines, and we will ensure to meet those timelines. But it is hard it is very hard. It's a difficult situation to go and to sell to persons. You need to just give up that 10%. Don't worry about it and let us move on because we now have good governance. To me, it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
You know, we won't leave the good governance issue, and we will fight until we get where we need to be with those and other things that we would have highlighted. But at the end of the day, how can you convince somebody who is not seeing the end, not seeing any light at the end of the tunnel, when it is they would have already been living hand to mouth, and now you're taking 10% of that? So it's a difficult situation, and I know my members are aware of the issue with the bondholders and whatever, and that is why our members are not as hard and fast, but they're still saying they can't afford it.
Yeah. Let me just step in here for a moment. One of the things that happened last week, and I think you were the specific union leader that pointed it out, the joint unions want an audience with the Prime Minister. Have you put a request in with the negotiating team from the government end, or has it only been a publicly stated comment?
Marlene, I don't think that we should have to, you know, this is a national issue. This is a national issue, and who is best to come out to deal with a national issue, a crisis that we're in, than the leader of the country? I don't believe that we have to. That's just my thought.
Why do you want to speak directly to the Prime Minister?
Well, the situation is that he is the Minister of Finance.
Right.
Let's start right there. So that in fact, he is the controller of the public purse. He is the person who I feel that, not that I'm not discrediting any of those 4 ministers who have met with us. As we've always said, our meetings have been respectful, they've been cordial, they've been understanding. That is there. But one have to understand that, yes, we have to go back to, each of us have to go back to who we are representing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I say, and I've said, if I'm the owner of a business and there's things happening in my business, I need to make myself available to see what the persons in that business are saying and how it is that I can correct it. It's not me who said I will meet with the union people. The Prime Minister said that himself in a past interview that they had with him. He will sit down with the unions. I'm not saying I don't feel at all offended that in fact he hasn't come. You know, I just find it strange that with everything that is going on, not once you have said, you know what, let me hear for myself. Right now, all he's getting is second-hand information. And I'm not saying at all that, in fact, the accurate message is not going to him. I am not alluding to that any at all. So I want to clear that up. What I'm simply saying, let me hear firsthand from the people who are out on the street, the people who are protesting, the people who can basically let my government fall. That is what I'm saying. That is not what we want to do. That is not in our contemplating mind at all. What we simply want to do, we want the same thing. We want to solve this matter in the best interest of all and for Belize and the citizens of Belize.
All right. Well, we got to take a very quick break here. But what I want to do when we come back and what viewers can look forward to is that we dive a bit deeper into the proposals and some that have been made some that have been made from the government end and the requests coming out from the unions as well. So we're going to dive into that when we come back. Please stay tuned.
Dwayne Moody, Isani Cayetano, Andrea Polanco, Paul Lopez. Your News 5 Belize teams do whatever it takes, go wherever they need to go, so you can catch the story wherever you are, whenever you want, on whatever device. Channel 5 Belize on television, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, because news is now everywhere, all the time. And so are we.
And welcome back. We continue our conversation this morning with the leaders of the Joint Union Negotiating Team as we continue to discuss the ongoing situation of the strike and, of course, the resumption of the discussions between the Joint and the Briceño administration. Before we went to the commercial break, we were discussing several points, and I would want for us to be able to continue to look at what happens now in terms of the whistleblowers legislation, in terms of the unjust enrichment legislation and asset recovery. Let's begin with you, Chief Magistrate, to get your position on where we are with respect to those three pieces of law.
As I indicated earlier, we received, even before we went back around the table, what resembled the whistleblowers legislation. And we have set deadlines in terms of when we will look at them and return it back to government with our comments as it relates to amendment or possible amendments.
Yeah.
We did get, just after the meeting, the illicit enrichment, asset recovery kind legislation. Little bit more detail. We're hoping, if I could just go back to the whistleblowers, that particular piece of legislation will be tabled in the House by June. So by the time we've gone through it, it goes back to the drafters. The undertaking is that it will go to the House. Hopefully, if the end of June, it will go at least tabled in June. Of course, then it goes through that process.
Yeah.
And then as far as the illicit enrichment, as I said, that is a little bit more involved. We have already received it. We've been asked to do a review and, in fact, return that back to government so it can go back to the drafters. We're looking at July, August in terms of that being tabled. Government didn't have a draft of the campaign financing. We had a draft, and the very day of the meeting, that draft was forwarded to the Attorney General Ministry and the drafters there to look at it to see whether or not they needed to add anything as it relates to that draft. So they will look at it and then they will get back to us in relation to the campaign financing draft bit for our input as it relates to that. So we didn't necessarily set a time limit on that because that would have depended on the Attorney General Ministry.
Yes, since the draft didn't come from them.
Yes.
Yeah.
They promised to give us a feedback from the Attorney General by today as to when more or less she would be able to work with the two documents and come up with a draft.
Yeah. So from the outside looking in, understanding very clearly that the demands coming from the unions included fast-tracking the passage of some of these legislations. So you went from what was the first timeline of a draft of 3 to 6 months and then implementation to now possible first reading within the next 3 months. So it does seem that we are inching closer to a resolution. Is that fair to say?
I believe so. In terms of the good governance issues, I believe that we are getting there. It seemed to be something from our membership, it seemed to be something that they are amenable to in terms of, say, accepting the timeline, because we have to consider the fact that we have a part to play in it. If it is that we are going to be doing a revision and providing them with some sort of suggested amendments, then we have to do our part as well. So it seems to be acceptable thus far by our membership.
And I want to be clear that you have at least you have submitted the campaign finance draft to the government, and then they have actually provided to you the Whistleblowers Act and the Illicit Enrichment Act that they would like to move forward on.
Correct.
Okay. Now, that takes care of one aspect of the impasse. We talk about getting the good governance measures in place. And then there are all the other, what would you call them? I suppose they're commitments made to alleviate what would happen if you proceed with, well, when you proceed with the 10% cut. Those include things like land credit, there are talks of promissory notes, there are talk of data packages from BTL to help teachers, especially with online learning. Let's talk about what has been proposed so far and what your positions are on them so far.
Well, there have been a lot placed on the table, Marlene, and
Yes.
as we've said before, some of the matters that were presented did not come with sufficient details for us to be able to say yes or no.
Yes.
So in terms of the land credit, that wasn't something that was our members are favorable, because they are looking at the fact that not everybody has land, not everybody might be able to get land, and so then that would not then assist them in any way. And so there didn't seem to be an acceptance of that proposal. In terms of the matter of credit, for example, and time off for us in particular, we have to then be able to work out with the ministry how that would work. Because I think it's a bit easier for the public officers to say, okay, an hour off each day, and you either go in at 9 or you come out at 4. But for us, it's a bit different, because if we are saying 4 hours or 5 hours for the week, that is more than a half day, and just about a whole day per week.
Yeah.
So those are issues that we have to work with our ministry, because again, we have our education rules that speaks to other areas that would then.
I was gonna say, isn't this is a proposal that perhaps from the outside looking in just won't work with schools, because you have contact hours to meet as well, and let's be honest, teachers in general, while there are certain number of hours they spend at school, their work goes beyond the time spent at school.
And I think that was a part of the concern as well. That for some, they felt that, well, even if I get 4 hours off, I still have all of this other work to do.
Yeah.
And so that's not any relief for me.
Yeah.
So, they're not looking at, well, relief from being in the classroom for 4 or 5 hours or for a day, a week or so, as a relief, because they have to go back and check papers and do lesson plans and all of these things. So there has to be a discussion with our ministry to see how best we can work that out.
Yeah. So those are 3 that you've covered so far: the land credit, the work hours, and then the other things that have been on the table.
Well, the data package for us, we didn't know what that would have entailed. And so we just learned at the last meeting that would be 50% of, I believe we were told for 25, the package is for 25 gigs, and they would get 50% off on that package. So again, while it's something that would assist our teachers because of these online classes that they have been spending out of pocket for, at the time we didn't have any details for us to be able to say yes, we accept, or it's a good offer, or
Okay.
we need a little bit more, that kind of thing. We finally got something last week that we can share with them now.
Okay.
What about you, Mr. Henry? What has been the position of the PSU membership in respect of what is being offered as well?
Okay. Well, for the most part, we share the same sentiments as Sister Elena and the teachers as it relates to the land credit issue, no? Without having to go to what she just said, or repeat what she just said a while ago.
Yeah.
So with regards to the reduction in the work hours for the week, that as she said a while ago, is going to favor a bit more the public officers, because it's an easier thing for that to be implemented in the public service as it relates to the public officers, and not the teachers so much. But that's how things work sometimes when you have these joint negotiations or discussions, that there will be certain things that will favor one party, and then there will be some other things that will favor another party. So, like for example, we were not offered the data packages that is exclusive to teachers.
Okay.
And so, but our public officers, of course, understand that, and so there was pretty much no discussion on that. They were not asking, well, what about us? Are we going to get them data package as well? At least I don't recall, that being the discussion, no?
Yeah.
But they're certainly looking forward to the reduction in the work hours. And Sister Fraser mentioned, I think she said a while ago that during the COVID-19 last year, at least the first phase of it, they actually had an increase in the workload, but productivity did not fall, although we had reduction in work hours back then too. In fact, I believe that she could vouch for the fact that the productivity actually increased. So for those who may have the mentality that because you're working less hours means that automatically the equation is that you will produce less, that is not the case. Right? We actually had more productivity from public officers when they were working less hours. So there are a number of reasons for that, but that I don't really have to go into right now. But certainly they are looking forward to a reduction in the work hours, and that is only one thing. But that does not bring the type of relief that that they would want coming from getting a reduction of 10% in their.
And the relief that's being worked out with the financial institutions and allowing for public officers, teachers to be able to access financing through DFC, National Bank. These are things that your membership, what's been the response from that?
Well, Marlene, I want to speak clearly to that, because that proposal would hardly benefit my members. Mm-hmm. The reason for that is that government have said they will dedicate $3 to $5 million to these institutions.
Yes.
If you want to cover a large number of people, it would mean that we're talking about mortgages of maybe nothing more than $50,000 to $75,000. Mm-hmm. Most of the HO, the persons, the senior managers, would already have a mortgage, and clearly not 50 or 75,000. So we would not be able to benefit from that any at all. So that proposal is for the most part no use to us. And I find that when it is that these types of proposals are put forward, that as Brother Henry is saying, some work, you see, in the case of the hours, it doesn't work for teachers. Well, in the case of this proposal, it hardly works for us senior managers, because at the end of the day, even if I even go back to when the National Bank was created, senior managers never profit from that. They never profit because there was a ceiling in terms of the size mortgage that you could have gotten from the National Bank. And at the end of the day, senior managers would have already, a number of them would have already had mortgages that exceeded what was the minimum, the maximum, the ceiling that you could have borrowed from that lending institution. In addition to the moratorium that they would have put in terms of giving us that leniency to not pay our mortgage until December or until January, because that they had proposed that as well.
Yeah.
Talking to the financial institution. Marlene, I will tell you that is one of those kicking the can down the road. When you have senior managers like myself who are not so far from retirement, the last thing I want to do is prolong any mortgage, because it is hard enough to meet the mortgage when you're getting your full salary rather than getting it, rather than meeting it while you're on a pension, which is far reduced than what you would have gotten. In addition to that, pushing it down would mean you still have to pay interest. So they're not giving you anything. In fact, what it's going to do is to cost you more, because now you still have to pay. And the whole aspect of moving your mortgage from one institution to the next, nobody talks about legal fees and the other associated fees. So they're not doing us a favor in terms of that. I'm not saying it would work for some,
So are there any proposals for the APSSM on the alleviation of the salary cut part that you're open to?
When in fact I pooled members, there were persons who were amenable to the tax credit, because obviously they owe taxes. They have land and they could have used that. And initially government had also proposed a credit note. I will tell you, I was very much in favor of the credit note from a personal perspective, because then I could have taken that credit note and go to my mortgage company and say, you know what, I want to put this towards my mortgage, thereby lessening the amount of monthly payment that I would have to make. So there's some that is amenable to our members, right? And like I told you, at that point, that proposal was 50% you get in land tax credit, and 50% in credit note or a promissory note.
Yeah.
But the situation is that even with promissory notes, while it is we would not have expected the government to pay that right away because we're in a financial
When would it
crunch.
be redeemable?
Well, all of that wasn't discussed.
Okay.
And while it is, there would have been a new proposal that would have come on the table. The redemption date would have been 3 years from now.
Okay.
If it is, that is accepted. The problem is that you have persons who are saying 3 years from now, man, I could starve by then. How am I going to meet my current and present obligation if I have to wait 3 years to get back something that would have been taken from me? So there are pros and there are cons in relation to, and that is why negotiation is never an easy position.
And it's harder when you're working with 3 different entities. So if I could just ask this question here, because what we're shining light on is that basically the membership, the requests coming out from memberships and the needs coming from memberships are different. Is it perhaps a situation where trying to get a one-size-fits-all proposal is going to constantly end in a stalemate? Because as you noted before, data packages work for teachers, lessened hours work for public service union, land credit works for APSSM, but they don't work for the others. So is it perhaps that needs to be an approach that is taken? The whistleblowers separate. Everybody's in agreement in, not whistleblower, good governance measures are separate because all unions are in agreement for that. But when it comes to the other issues, it seems that there aren't solutions that will work for all three entities.
But I beg to differ because, in fact, a proposal like a promissory note would work for everyone. What wouldn't work is when it's redeemable. That is where the issue would come in. Because with a promissory note, everybody gets paid at some point. The issue is at what point. That is where the problem is. All right?
The commitment also includes the revisiting of the cuts in 6 months or 1 year. Is that also on the table?
Yes, it still is.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's not that, in fact, and we are quite okay with that because it would mean that every 6 months, and once they have established that committee, that tripartite committee that they would have given an undertaking to, that would also help in reviewing the country's financial situation starting October and then a following 6 months, so that at the end of the first year, we would be able to assess where we are and whether or not there is a need for any further cut. So that is important. But you're right, Marlene, it's hard to find something that fits everyone.
Yeah. Let me bring it back to Senator Smith and Senator Henry for a moment. You know, I think when we look at the mass group of people who came out on Friday, you know, the numbers, the estimates, I know you guys have shared, it's about 1,000 people who came out, PSU and BNTU, green and yellow shirts. The public reaction, though, has been mixed. You know, I've spoken to union members on both sides who say, when they see me in the green shirt, I get one of two reactions: go back to work, or I'm with you. What's your sense? What are your members saying right now about how important it is to have that public support, and what would you gauge it to be at this point?
Well, for us, Marlene, our teachers have been going out on an educational campaign across the country. And their report has been that feedback has been excellent. Yeah. You know, when they explain to the public what it is that we are doing and why we are standing up, for the most part, people understand and people support it because that we are doing right now. There are a few who don't want to hear anything from us. You know, the moment they see you is like, you know, we don't want to hear, take your cut, that kind of thing. Yeah. But for the most part, we have had support across this country. We have even had persons who are willing to sign a petition to say that they support us. So while we do have some, and we understand that a lot of the talk has been, for the most part, for persons who are supportive of the present government, and that is understood. But in general, there is a huge support, especially when it comes to the good governance issues. There is a huge support for us and what it is that we are doing right now.
Yeah. And for you, President Henry?
Yeah. Yes, I have similar experience, Sister Elena. We're not going through the streets and so on. And what I do is whenever I have time, I would stop in, you know, and have discussions with different individuals. I even have certain persons calling me from, you know, the private sector, saying that, you know, they are in full support, especially with regards to the good governance legislations that we want to put in place. And so I think for the most part that we have been getting whatever negative reactions, unfortunately, you know, are from those individuals who look at this as if though it is a political issue, and we keep, and that is one of the reasons why one of our chants that we have, you know, is saying 1, 2. This is not about red or blue. Right, because this has absolutely nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with either political parties, and as a matter of fact, it has to do with both of them combined. right? Because both of them over the years have caused us to be in the position that we are. And hence the reason why we are adamant about getting these good governance legislations put into effect and with some teeth, so that it does not matter who comes into administration, they will have to abide by these various legislations, and we can, as the public, can then hold them to, to whatever the conditions of these legislations will be. So that is one of the reasons why we are, definitely not going to let go of these good governance legislations. And I just want, people to understand that, man, this thing has nothing to do, including our own public officers, because we have some of our own public officers who are, very much partisan, and what they do is that they facilitate abuse and threats to other public officers who are, fighting for the cause now.
Yeah.
And I really and truly wonder if it is that they will not get that 10% cut themselves, or they have some secret that I don't know of that relieves them when they get that 10% cut, because for the most part, I know most of our public officers, as Sister Fraser mentioned a while ago, are living from hand to mouth. So I don't know what it is that, these administrative officers and so on who are, some of the supervisors who are attacking or threatening our public officers, why is it that they are not fighting for the 10%? It seems they have something that is more valuable than 10%, for them not to be fighting for.
I want to stick a pin and go back to what you just mentioned there, President Henry, in respect of what seems to be the intimidation of public officers who are participating in this particular action. How have you guys been able to address this issue within the membership, those who work in the various departments?
Well, what we have been doing is that we have been asking those public officers who have been facing those sort of threats of victimization, to report it to us. And in the last meeting that we had with the government side, we brought this up, and the ministers, I'm hoping that they are serious about the commitment that they said that they were going to look into these issues and put a stop to them. But they had mentioned that, for those, especially the transfers that they're taking place right now, that we look at them as punitive measures, to threaten and to punish public officers who are, taking part in these industrial actions. That they are going to stop these transfers. So I'm hoping that, like I said, they are serious about it. And I want to ask all public officers who are listening right now, who are going to eventually hear this or hear it from their colleagues, to report to the union any activity or any action that they believe, is as a result of their wanting to take part in the industrial action. Even something as simple as wearing yellow shirt has brought some, negative actions against our public officers, just simply because they are wearing a yellow shirt, right? Which is, way past being immature in my mind, no? And so, and not supported, because, like I said, man, this thing doesn't have to do with anything with politics. Unfortunately, it is this administration that is in right now. But we came off, as Sister Fraser always say, we came out of a very abusive relationship before, and right into another one. We can't continue this way.
Yeah.
Well, let me just get one more question in for Senator Smith. Today, May 10th, should have been the second round of opening of schools for face-to-face. Do you know if schools are participating, or are the majority of your teachers on strike?
Well, we have a lot of teachers on strike. One of the things that I just want to share as well, in terms of what Brother Henry said, intimidation comes in various forms. And so we see where during this time of strike, various areas, departments are calling people out to attend workshops. We see ministry giving days to say we are coming in to inspect your schools, knowing that the teachers are on strike. So it comes in different forms. But for now, for those schools who would have been opening today, we know that some of them might still be opening, will still be having that face-to-face, and others would then continue to be on strike. We have seen where, for example, a principal will send a note to parents and say, well, these level teachers, standard 2, standard 3, whatever level, will be at school giving out packages, so come for them. When the teachers have clearly said to them, they are on strike.
Yeah.
So they are using all of these other ways and means of trying to force the teachers to report to school. The minister has said, several persons have said that we have a right to strike, we have a right to take industrial action. And so if you recognize that right, then why is it that you are still trying to find ways and means of having our teachers and professors not exercise the right that you say that they have, that we know we have? So some may be back at school today, Marlette. From our feedback, we expect that our numbers would remain, and for some even increasing in some districts in terms of those on strike.
Let me just ask generally. If you were to say, from where you were at the point of the budget presentation to where you are today, would you say that we are closer now to a resolution, we as in the country, where the unions and the government are at odds?
Yeah,
That's hard. That's hard to respond to, Marlene. We are better in the sense that we've gone from months of being able to produce draft documents to now getting draft documents. So in that sense, we would have been better. But in terms of property loss, money that has been lost, I don't know that we're anywhere better. In fact, we're worse because now we have lost. It's there, and based on the budget estimation, the cut has been put for 3 years. It's funny because even in our negotiation, where we were saying, our consultation, when in fact we were asked about the cuts, we had indicated that even if it is we were to accept it, clearly it would have only been for a year. Lo and behold, the government has put in that cut for 3 years. They've also put in the increment freeze for up to 2 years when we never agreed to that. So in that aspect, I wouldn't say that we are any closer to resolution. It seems that decisions have been made and it is being forced upon us. It is never good for relationship, employer-employee relationship, to enter into anything where there at least not some effort of meeting a middle ground. In our case, I feel, and I've said that to the ministers, I feel that we were set up from the beginning, because if it is they knew that they were going to pull out a piece of legislation and use that against us, then maybe it is that needed to have been told to us from day one, rather than having us go there saying certain things, making certain recommendations, only to be ignored, and government then making this unilateral position. As I've said before, it is not that the legislation does not exist. It's not that the minister don't have the right under the Constitution. So I've made that clear. What I think we would have liked was at least to know that that is where they were going from the beginning, and then we would have been, I guess, putting the message to our members differently.
So
and
you
maybe
just so we can round it off. So in summary, you feel that that there's some strides that have been made, but you wouldn't say that we're much closer to a resolution. Senator Smith and President Henry, do you share the same perspective?
I think I can agree in terms of the cut, Marlene. We have raise the matter with them because the budget, it shows projections for 2-3 years down the road. And so we are aware that in that budget, those projected figures are shown. And what they have said to us is that we've agreed with you all that it's going to be on a yearly basis and we do a revision, but because the budget has projections for 2-3 years down the road, then you would see that there. But if it is that at the end of the year, we're okay and we don't need to continue with the cut or might not need that amount, then we will certainly do that. So it has, while we understand the projection in the budget, it has still put us in a position where, it comes across sometimes to our members as if though we're not being truthful with them, and then it creates more issues for us. So in terms of the other areas we have made headway, significant headway. In terms of the cut, we will see what it is that they will, if our members are to accept the last proposals that they gave us, then we will see what happens when we meet again on Thursday.
Yeah. All right. Last words, President Henry?
Yes, I think I share, of course, both my sister's sentiments with regards to those. And just to go back a little bit to what Sister Fraser mentioned a while ago in terms of the fact that the salary cut is immediate, and we would want to try to find some relief that would be at least in a short term, as opposed to having to wait an entire 3 years to redeem credit. It goes back to I recall an article that I read some years ago about some country in Africa or some state in Africa where a relief, one of these organizations that provide food relief and so on, presented the municipality there in Africa with several tons of grain in order for them to plant, and they prepared the ground and everything for them, and provided them with tons of grain to plant. And when the organization representatives went back to the country, to that municipality, a few months later or a year later to evaluate the progress of the project, right? Because they were supposed to plant those grains, they found that the ground was almost exactly the same way that they left it. There wasn't a single plant in the ground, and so they asked the people there, well, what happened? Did the grains fail? Was there a drought? Was there anything like that? And the people said, no, nothing like that. We just needed to eat now, right? They couldn't wait for whenever the time that the plants were going to grow and produce. Yeah. So they ate what was there, So that is where I think that the issue of my suggestions, because I can tell you the experience that I had with the just a minute, let this truck pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was getting the workers' bus, right, the ones from Dangriga and the one from Belize City, the regular bus fare from Dangriga is $7, right? And the workers' bus is charging them $5. That means that public officers are saving $80 every month, right? And that's a relatively significant amount of money when you look at it. Now, if it is that the government, can subsidize the bus, as was already brought up in our discussions, and public officers could maybe pay down to $2, to commute to work, because as Sister Fraser had said, some of them had broken down their 10% already. And I know some of them have told me, Brother Henry, this 10% is pretty much my entire commuting budget. So what will happen then is that more than likely some days I will not be able to go into work, right? But if the government can subsidize and it's only 2 buses right now, where, there's one from Cayo, because there is also some workers coming from San Ignacio. So, but that's not a dedicated or a priority workers bus. I hope that I could turn that into one, and it will only be 3 buses to subsidize, and that will bring significant savings. So it's not an issue that we could have one pill that will solve everything. But if you implement a lot of this little different things, we could very well achieve, that everyone would be satisfied at the end of the day.
So the cabinet should hear some of those proposals tomorrow, and the joint unions return to the table with government on Thursday. That's the case.
Right.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
All right.
But Marlene, I just want to say, because I noticed that people talk about, as my one last thing, people talk about the joint unions and they make just reference to PSU and BNTU. But there are members of APSSM that are playing some very significant role in all of these negotiations.
Yeah.
And in fact, offering the support to PSU members. So at least I want to give that acknowledgement to those members. They've come off the fence, and they're, in fact, while it is very small in numbers, and clearly you would very well not be able to see shirts because we're working on that. But even if it is, you would have been able to. We're small in numbers, small but significant. So at least I want to say that, and I want to give thanks to those members of APSSM who are playing their role and doing what they need to do to ensure that this process works, and continue supporting the actions of the joint unions. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
I
thank
just
you
want to quickly follow up with that. Just one quick thing, if I may. I just want to acknowledge as well the representatives that we also have around the table from the NTUCB. Who have also been, playing some very critical roles with regards to, the entire issues that we have been facing. And I just wanted to acknowledge them as well. Thanks.
All right. Well, we thank you for keeping us updated as to how things are going. This is a critical issue for all of us, being able to have a resolution between both the unions and the government. Thank you so much for the update, and of course, continue to stay safe.
Thank you, too.
Thank you, Marlene. Just a reminder, this week is Education Week, and Friday is Teachers' Day. Yeah. So we salute our teachers this week.
So an even bigger celebration on Friday.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and we'll be back in a few. Please stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.